6.3 was not such an easy section, so 6.4 is going to help us review it. So let's take a look. First thing we gotta do, the leading coefficient is not 1. Try to make the number smaller. If there's anything we can divide them all by the same thing. In this case, we cannot. So I'm gonna think of two numbers that when I multiply them equals 40. Remember, I multiply that 8 times 5. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply equals 40, but when I add them equals 14. So I know for the first three sections, I used to do my little chart of my factors here at the side. I think by now we should already be good at this, how to do this. So the numbers I'm looking for are 4 and 10. And because the leading coefficient is not 1, these numbers, positive 4, positive 10, is how I'm going to split the middle term. So we have 8p squared plus 4p plus 10p plus 5. All right, so looking at the first two terms, I can factor out 4p out of it. So I'm going to have 2p plus 1. Looking at the second group, I can factor a positive 5 out of it, and I'm going to have 2p plus 1. So my factors are going to be 2p plus 1 and 4p plus 5. Now, this other one, I'm looking for two numbers that multiplied equals 28, but when I add them equals negative 11. I'm thinking of negative 4, negative 7. All right, because my leading coefficient is not 1, this is how I'm going to split my middle term. So I have 4y squared minus 4y minus 7y plus 7. Let me factor out on the first two terms. Let me factor out a 4y out of it. So I'm going to have y minus 1. On the second group, let me factor a negative 7 out of it. So I'm going to have y minus 1. Once again, we want our parentheses to match. So that's why I factor a negative 7, not just a positive 7. All right, so my factors are y minus 1 and 4y minus 7. Take a look at this other one. I want my two numbers that when I multiply them equals negative 72, but when I add my numbers is equal to 6. So I'm thinking of, I know the signs are different. I'm thinking of positive 12, negative 6. And that's how I'm going to split my middle term. So I have 8x squared plus 12x minus 6x minus 9. Looking at the first two terms, I can factor the 4x out of each. So I'm going to have 2x plus 3. Looking at the second group, I can factor a negative 3 out. So I'm going to have 2x plus 3. Now my answer, my factor should be 2x plus 3 and 4x minus 3. Remember, the 2x plus 3 is the common parentheses. The 4x minus 3 is what we have outside of the parentheses. Looking at this other one, okay, I want my two numbers that when I multiply them equals negative 240. Remember, I multiply those out. When I add my numbers, I want it to equal to negative 1. So the numbers that I'm looking for, let's see. Numbers I'm looking for are negative 16, positive 15. Okay. So that's how I'm going to split my middle term. So I'm going to have 12a squared minus 16ab plus 15ab minus 20b squared. All right, so looking at the first two terms, I can factor out 4a. So I'm going to have 3a minus 4b. Looking at the second group, I can factor out 5b, and I'm going to have 3a minus 4b. So my factors are going to be 3a minus 4b and 4a plus 5b. Lastly, let's take a look at this one. Numbers seem too big, right? So let's make our numbers smaller. Let's start by dividing everything by 6. 6z. So divide everything by 6c, so I'm going to have 6c squared. See, 102 divided by 6 is 17z plus 12. Okay, nothing else I can factor out. So I'm looking for two numbers that when I multiply them equals 72. Remember, I'm just focusing on the parentheses. But when I add my numbers equals 17. I'm thinking of 8 and 9. That's how I'm going to split my middle term. Once again, I'm just focused on the parentheses now. So I have 6z squared plus 8z plus 9z plus 12. Looking at the first two numbers, the first two terms, I'm going to factor 2z out. So I have 3c plus 4. Looking at the other numbers, let me factor a positive 3 out. So I'm going to have 3z plus 4. Okay, so now my factors of this are 3z plus 4 and 2z plus 3. But on my answer, do not forget the greatest common factor we took out from the beginning, the 6z. All right, good luck. Have fun.